Ladies and gentlemen,
Good evening.
Are you ready?
Okay, here we go.
You're listening to the Deal Room Podcast. Join us as we bring you the inside scoop on business sales and acquisitions. Get across trends in the area and hear the industry's best recount their real-life tips, traps, and experiences. Now, here's your host, Joanna Oakey.
Hi, it's Joanna Oakey here, and welcome back to the Deal Room Podcast, a podcast proudly brought to you by our commercial legal practice, Aspect Legal. Now, today we have on the show Marcus Nicholls, who's giving us a recount from a real-world perspective about the mistakes not to make when selling your business. And Marcus's recount comes from his own experience in selling his business not once, but twice. Well, let's call it 1.5 times, perhaps, given the first attempt didn't go so well. So if you're gearing up for an exit of your business now or into the near future, you might find that this episode contains a lot of lessons that might be really useful for you to understand as you're gearing up for exit. Well, that's it. Here we go with our discussion with Marcus. Marcus, I just want to say a massive thank you for joining us on the Deal Room Podcast today.
Fabulous. Thanks, Joe. I really appreciate being invited, and hopefully we can distill some wonderful content for your fabulous guests.
I tell you what, this is really good content in terms of a story. I just love the stories. I love the stories working through how people have felt in that period of selling, and then on reflecting where they see, where some things, pop out that they think that they could use to, I guess, provide insight for people who haven't gone through the process before. And that's where stories are just so helpful, because it doesn't really matter how many times I talk about things from a legal perspective. The best way of people understanding what it feels like to sell a business is by hearing from someone who sold their business. So I just want to say a massive thank you, Marcus, for coming on board and talking about your experience.
Yep, no, absolutely. More than happy to share, because there's been a few trials and tribulations in the process, so it'll be a bit of fun.
Oh, yes. All right. So now you are part of an unusual crew, I guess, of people that have sold your business not once, but twice. Is this correct? Am I telling the truth?
You are telling the truth. And yeah, there's certainly not many people that have successfully sold their business twice. Well, I wouldn't say successfully. If we sold it twice successfully, we wouldn't have happened. The first time.
We sold it only once. Yes.
The second time was. So, yeah.
Yes. Okay, so maybe you just give us a bit of a rundown. How is it that you came to sell your business twice? Or, well, maybe we'll call it 1.5 times, I guess, perhaps.
So we obviously made the decision to sell the business, put it on the market.
And sorry, before we do that, I just want to lay the groundwork a little bit here. So the business that we're talking about here is a pet resort business. Is that right?
That is correct. We had run it at this point for 18 years. 18
years. Yep.
Had built it from a very small country kennel, you would sort of say, up into a sort of a multi-million-dollar pet resort that and built a new complex and all sorts of other things. And really took it to another level. So we had sort of, a play park, like a swimming pool and water fun park for dogs, and we had all the TVs and roast chicken dinners and you name it, it was available. Chicken ice cream.
Chicken
and beef ice cream, so all the bits and pieces that people are really after nowadays, because people really treat their animals at a whole other level than they used to, 30 years ago, and are really wanting the things that they have at home to be the same when they actually put them into a pet resort. So, and that's what we focused on. So
this had been 18 years in the making. It had been your business baby, I get.
It was. It took a lot of love, a lot of learning,
Yeah. So, I do understand. And, it's a long journey. 18 years is a long journey in business, a lot of highs, a lot of lows.
Yep. We actually opened our new facility on the week that Lehman's fell over.
Oh, wow.
For everyone that knows the the GFC.
Yeah.
So the week Lehman fell over, we opened our new pet resort. So had just spent a few $1 million building it and opened our doors, and it was like, well, that's a good start.
But obviously, and presumably that was a hard time for a while, but obviously it bounced back then over time.
Yeah, and certainly it allowed you to really refocus and just go, okay, well, where is our market? What are we doing? How are we going about it? And let's rebuild. Because it was an instant sort of 20 to 25% drop overnight in clientele.
Well, actually, and I guess as an aside, and this was not the point of what we were discussing today, but gosh, you just never know what comes out when you start talking, right? As an aside, this is perhaps a really interesting sort of thought point for people who are sitting, who have businesses that have been fundamentally stressed by these really challenging times that we're in right in the middle of COVID.
Yeah.
And you said something right then that I just thought was really interesting. You said we really had to take a look at our model and re-look at how that model works. So I thought that's really interesting. So you realised you needed to make changes to make it successfully through. Was that what happened?
Yeah. Basically just sort of pull the business apart and put it back together in a way that we knew would help to regrow it and to make it better moving forward, to just relying on what we had done up to that point.
And when you did that, were you thinking of exit at that point as well? Were you thinking of building something that was more solid to exit?
We'd always planned to exit. We weren't too sure when we would do that, but it was always on our agenda that we were building a business to get to the point where we could effectively run it under management, or we could exit it successfully through a sale versus it being reliant wholly and solely on us as the individual people at the core face of it.
Yeah, that's great, because many business owners, perhaps don't build a business with the idea of exit in mind. But I guess it is one of the opportunities, if you want to put on an optimistic hat of the times that we're in at the moment. It's giving everyone the opportunity to rethink about their business model, what it looks like for the future, and perhaps now to build in a business that's stronger for an exit than perhaps it was pre-COVID.
Yep, absolutely. And certainly making people, it really does make people really focus on those sort of things. And what's important, looking at their revenue streams, what's bring, like the scenario of, 80% of my revenue comes from 20% of my business, or 20% of my customers. So it's like, okay, well, do we shed these other sections or not? Or, what things do we actually sort of change that, and what lifestyle do we really want moving forward?
Yeah, absolutely. So, okay, so you went through these highs and lows, and then highs again, and then after 18 years, you came to the point of sale. How long did you think about sale before you actually put it on the market?
We decided, we'd been umming and ahhing a little bit, but I was over in Mexico getting some treatment, and through that process, I made the decision that, when I say I made the decision, we are a couple, so my partner was fundamentally involved in it. But at that point, I said to her, I really think we should look at putting it on the market when I get back. And so that was the consideration of the first stage of looking at that. And that was back in 2015. And then it took us probably a year and a half before we actually then finally got it to market. So
yeah, and isn't that interesting? I mean, it's interesting that it took 1.5 years to get to market. I think many business owners just don't understand how long the process is between having the idea that you want to exit and then actually getting to the point of exit, and sometimes far longer than that, as we'll come back to in a moment. But when we're talking just about the first sale, in inverted commas, 1.5 years. And had you expected that it would be that long? Was that something that was a surprise?
Yes and no. We weren't in a hurry, if that makes sense. We weren't going, right, yep, I'm back, we're going to put this on the market ASAP. We were going, okay, this is where we want to be. We want to exit. We want to exit not sooner than later per se, but let's start doing the groundwork of, considering looking for a business broker or considering getting all the financials of the business looking more appropriate to sale.
Yeah.
Often when you run your own business, they don't necessarily look appropriate for a sale because of the way we all like to run our business. So there had to be some time spent on that, going through that process and just cleaning those sort of bits and pieces up and considering those sort of options. So I always knew that was going to be at least a year to probably 2 years, and then it was probably going to take a year to 2 years to sell.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So let's talk about this experience then the first time round. So how long was it on the market for, and how did that all work?
So we ended up engaging a broker who approached it in a different way from the sale point of view, and we got massive interest in it, like substantial interest in it, and had multiple people wanting to buy it, which opened us up to getting a real premium on potentially what the business was worth at that point of time. And some people put an offer in that we accepted and went through the process. They signed all the paperwork, did all the bits and pieces that were needed, and we got to the point of them actually taking over. The day before settlement, they booked a meeting with our broker and said, we don't have the money to settle. Our finances have been held up, but can we come in and operate the business under license?
Wow. And so how did you feel at that moment when you found out about that? I mean, I guess you had made plans for that completion date. Is that right? And because I think it's also important to explain, having a business for 18 years and then exiting is a massive thing in itself. But this was also where you lived as well,
Yes.
wasn't it? So I think that's important to understand as well. Well, I mean, moving trucks were probably lined up to come in the following day. Is that what it was meant to be?
Well, it was actually more than that. We'd already emptied everything. So our plan at that point of time was, being that we'd been in one location for so long and hadn't really had the opportunity to travel, my partner and I had effectively just got rid of everything. So we emptied the house. We had a tiny storage bay that had our artwork and business files in it.
Wow.
And that was it. Everything else we owned fitted in the back of the car, and we were hitting the road and having fun.
Wow. And so that's it. You're sitting there. All you had left is your stool and your campfire, saying, well, this is it, our last night. Let's say goodbye. And then you get the call.
Yeah. So we ummed and ahed. We ummed and ahed about whether letting them under license. But there was two factors that came into play. One was that they said it would be 2 to 3 weeks was one of the factors. The second factor was that we had emptied everything. So we didn't have cutlery, we didn't have glasses, we didn't have furniture, So if we chose to stay, we were staying in an empty house with nothing. We'd also, obviously, the buyer had chosen to had chosen to take all the staff on under new contracts. So we actually had to notify all the staff a couple of weeks earlier that they wouldn't have a job in 2 weeks, basically. Went through all that process. So we didn't actually officially have any staff.
Oh, my goodness. And so your terminations of the staff weren't contingent on the on completion. It was oh my goodness,
everything. Like you know, I mean, it was effectively the day before settlement, so everything had been done that needed to be done for the settlement to go through, and then to get that news.
Wow.
So we ummed and ahed, and we decided to let them in under license.
Right. And so what did that look like at the time? What was the intention? What did you think was going to happen at that point?
Well, what we thought was going to happen was that it would be for 2 to 3 weeks, and then we would settle, and we would then continue on with our new life.
And that's not what happened.
And that's not what happened. So, like our actual contract of sale did have some things in it place in relation to not necessarily, in relation to interest and completions and things like that, which went for the first sort of 3 weeks. And then they came back to us and sort of said, no, it's been held up. It's going to take a bit longer. So we had to do a new licensing agreement at that point, of which we then needed to make sure we were getting enough money from the licensing agreement to be able to live. Because we didn't own another house we were just going to be free and easy, but we still had a mortgage. We still had a mortgage on the property that we had to meet. So, and we still had effectively all the assets we still owned in the business. So there was all that componentry as well. So it meant that the licensing agreement needed to be big enough to be able to cover all of those components.
Right. Wow.
Which it was agreed to. And on we went for another month.
And then what happened?
And then we signed another licensing agreement.
Oh my goodness, holy dooly. And so at this time, were there securities, were there personal guarantees?
There had been personal guarantees right from the word dot before we actually did the sale anyway. They had signed personal guarantees. So all that was already in place as part of the sale process. But it was one of those sort of situations that you just didn't think was just going to go on. And we let it go on, because that was part of the issue too. Because at the end of the day, we didn't want to go back.
Yeah.
We had emotionally made the decision to move on, and we had moved on. It was a really hard thing to consider going back in when you'd moved on from that business. And everything that had, which was really hard. And consequently, we let it go on longer than we ever should have.
And how long did it go on for, I guess?
13
the next
months.
Question. 13 months. And what happened in the end? Obviously, they didn't cough up the cash.
No, so the end result was we had to terminate the licensing agreement, terminate the sale contracts, and go back in.
And so presumably you didn't just let it go with the purchases. Presumably you then had an action that you had to consider against the purchases. What happened there? And you probably can't talk much about it, but was that something that went on for a while? Was that something that was expensive?
Yeah, and we did make the decision to legally chase them for a failed sale. And that process has taken a number of years and a few $100,000 in legal fees.
Wow.
So we're aiming that outcome will be in our favour at some point in the near future.
Wow. Okay. All right. So that's sale number one. Let's talk about sale number two. And I'm hoping, fingers crossed, I do know the outcome, but I'm hoping, fingers crossed, it's a more positive outcome. So I guess firstly, you had to go back into the business and take the business owner over again. Is that right?
That is correct. Yeah.
How was it when you went and took it over?
A mess. We had run a very systematised business, which was part of the reason we could step away a little bit from it, from every component of what we did and how we did it, because we were very focused on offering the highest quality of care we could at a consistent level. So everything we did was very systematized. Everyone knew what they were doing, and we walked back into a business that was a mess.
Yeah.
And that didn't include, obviously, all the damage and other bits and pieces that had gone on in the time we weren't there. So, yeah.
And how, that must have been a huge energetic effort to try and, like the energy in building a business once is massive. But when you feel like you should be out of it, I can only but imagine how difficult it must be to get in there and build up the energy to do it all again. How did you do that?
Lots of tears. Lots of bottles of champagne. We have a policy in our house. We drink champagne on good days and we drink champagne on bad days.
Oh, right. Yeah, I was going to say, because quite often, of course, champagne is thought of as the celebration, but I imagine there was a period of time where there wasn't a lot of celebrating.
No. So there was lots of bottles of champagne for bad days, and there was a lot of bad days. But what it really taught us was that it helped that we knew the systems, we knew how to run the business well, and we just had to go back to it. We just had to really implement all of that. And it was a real lesson for us in realizing that emotionally we could go back in. So opposed to thinking, no, I can't, it's going to destroy me, or, all those sort of emotional things we have. We actually got to the point of going, well, we actually learnt that we could, we could rise to it. We could go back in. But the other thing it taught us too was the idea that how hard it is for business owners to set up their businesses to run in a systematized way. Although we knew what we were doing, it still took us 4 months to 5 months to get that business functioning systematized again, just in the way we used to do it, which was phenomenal, really. And we knew it all. So there were some real lessons through the process. And as I said, lots of tears, but, we just had to. There was no, you had to get up every day and you had to go and do what you needed to do. You couldn't not. And if you didn't, you were then going to destroy everything that you had done for the last 18 years. You were just going to let it all go. And it was worth too much to us personally to do that.
Yeah.
Not from a monetary point of view, just simply emotionally.
Yeah. And so then once you went back in, took it over again, how long did it take you before you could get it back on the market and get it sold again?
Well, we'd done that classic thing of, not classic, but I knew that it took 3 to 4 months of just legal stuff to have to go through to end all contracts and things like that. Just, you got to send this legal letter off, and then you wait for 28 days, and then you send the next legal letter off and all the rest of it. And then outside of that, we knew that because the way the financial years had fallen from the date we'd sold the business, we knew that we didn't have any financial figures, and we'd spent close on 100,000 on fixing stuff, or a bit over 100,000 on fixing stuff when we went back in. So we destroyed effectively 3 years of financial figures.
Wow.
So we knew that basically it was going to be, we would have been back a year and a half before we were at a point of having correct financial figures moving forward for someone to really look at. So we were thinking it was a 4-year process, 4 to 5 year process.
Wow.
Put the business back on the market.
Wow. And is that how it eventuated?
It's not how it eventuated. What happened was we decided the website that had been created for the sale of the business the first time, we put that back up there, but we did no marketing or advertising of it. We just simply put the website up and thought, well, if someone is looking, who knows? And in the space of about 6 months after we had gone back in, we had a couple of interested parties come looking.
Wow.
Now, I think to some degree, one of those parties was simply looking for a cheap buy, a distressed seller. The other party was genuinely looking, but at the end of the day, the finances didn't stack up, and the business was no longer as running as well as it was. And we knew that we wouldn't get the premium we got first time around. But we negotiated it through, and the end result was we ended up selling the second time to actually 2 people we really liked. So we're really happy with the people we sold to. We lost about $1 million in the sale price.
Wow.
Second time around. So it was, it hurt financially. There's no question about that. But it also then allowed us to move on, and we knew it's like sort of opportunities lost. If you stay somewhere for too long, you miss future opportunities because you've just simply have been fixated on trying to hang on to something that you had already made the emotional decision to move on from and still wanted to have moved on.
Yeah. Oh, well, look, it's great that in the end you were able to sell it successfully,
Yes.
and not be bound to it, I guess, for that 4 to 5 years that you're
Yeah.
concerned it might take. So then reflecting back on your experiences, what do you feel are the main lessons and pointers that you'd like to give to our listeners who are, probably many of them right in the throes of getting ready to exit their business? What's the sort of things that you wish someone had have had have said in a podcast to you before you started down that track?
Yeah, it's, like all these things, it's always your advisors around you will sort of say it's your decision, but sometimes you just have to hold with what you believe is right for you. But there is a few things that I definitely would never, ever do again. One would be I would make sure the deposit that someone has paid up front is correct, at least 10% of the business sale price.
And so it sounds like it wasn't in your case.
It wasn't in our case. And if it had been, they never would have went through in the first place.
Right. Oh, right. So you mean they just didn't have the financial capacity?
They didn't have that much cash sitting there,
right,
as the deposit.
So, I mean, it's a good point, isn't it, that a deposit acts as a filter for someone who is geared up enough to be able to complete. When I say geared, I mean prepared financially for being able to properly complete. And I think you make a really good point. A failure to be able to meet that should set off red flags that, should be investigated in terms of questioning the ability of a purchaser to complete if they're not able to provide the full deposit. So that's a really good point. And did you have any reservations at the time when you were thinking about, changing the deposit approach?
I did, but we were, I guess, sort of, you just get into the focus on this sort of sale and thinking it was okay. It wasn't, I was aware it should be higher, but I wasn't thinking it was, extremely bad, I guess you would sort of say. But I
had no idea of what it could have created as the outcome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's certainly the first thing. The second would be never, ever, ever, ever leave your business.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, before you get paid.
Before you get paid. Before the cash is in the bank, do not walk out that door. Do not do a licensing agreement. Do not do any of that. Although, you might argue licensing agreements work well for some people, on a whole, it's one of those sort of situations that someone can destroy your business very quickly once they get in there. And particularly if you still own it, obviously, which was the case with us. So I would never, ever let anyone, under any circumstances, I would ever do that again.
And, it's interesting that we're talking about this because, having a component of the purchase price deferred or contingent on performance of the business into the future is quite a usual occurrence it's a way of overlaying, I guess, something that can happen more regularly across your instance, which is much rarer that someone just completely fails to complete. But it's interesting, isn't it, because it does highlight the issues when you're looking at anything that's a deferred payment in any way, having to really think through seriously the potential risk that the deferred payments won't be made. And so really getting clear on how it is that you'll ensure that those payments are made or retain enough control in the business that you can preserve the value in it if they aren't paid. So
absolutely, because it does happen, as you're saying, it happens a lot with a lot of businesses, the deferred payment component based on its performance over the next couple of years or whatever it may actually be. And it's a real problem. If you're not the boots on the ground person effectively running that business in the way that you know how to run it, there's no guarantees that the people that you've handed it off to are going to do it in the same light that you are. So you really do run the risk of losing those components. So making sure that you have enough fail safes in there that it's not your fault, in any shape or form. You might wonder what would happen if you were selling a business during just before COVID-19 and had a deferred payment. Could that destroy your deferred payment?
Absolutely.
And that's right out of your control, So it's all these little things that need to be considered and thought about in that scenario. Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, fabulous. And then, what else were the learnings? Were there other ones sitting in there?
They are the two massive ones, which I should have done and should have done more of is actually really done the investigations into the buyers to make sure that they were financially able to do the sale in the first place. Yeah. Because there is a lot more you can do in that space that we didn't do.
Yeah, it's interesting, I guess, because one of the reasons that you ended up with such, such a great price the first time round was because you had a lot of competitive tension, it sounds like, so lots of potential buyers, but partly that was because it was an unusual marketing strategy that was used to hit people who may not have otherwise been thinking about buying a business. But I guess the flip side of that is then you need to add to that really strong filters to ensure that the net that you're casting in isn't full of people who therefore don't have the capability to buy a business because they haven't gone through enough of the process themselves before the idea has hit them to buy a business. So
absolutely, and the other component of that is the pet industry is a love industry. So there's a lot of people who are like, in all the years that we ran the pet resort, I would say a huge amount of our customers and suppliers and other bits and pieces would say to us, this is all I really want to do is what you do. I'd love to own something like this. But there's the desire of I would love to own and the actual realization of in today's light, the multi-millions of dollars that you actually need to do it. It's no longer this sort of, yes, I could do that for, it's not like a service-based business that you can start cheaply. You've got to buy the property, you've got to build the infrastructure, you've got to have all that. And it's a different style of business that requires you to move past just the love component of it. And that's all. Whenever you sell a love industry business, you're always going to have those people, and that's where you have to really do the due diligence to make sure that the people who are genuine are actually correct. On that story, in our first, we had an open day where we had I think about 40 different people come through looking at the business in relation to buying it. And there was one of those people that halfway through, he said, can I have a meeting with you and the broker? And because I want to know what I need to do to take this off the market.
Wow.
And we sat down with him and I got a gut feeling instantly that he didn't have the cash.
Right.
I knew it straight away, but we had to go through the process. We didn't take it off the market. He had to produce enough stuff for us to want to take it off the market, but we knew he couldn't. We just knew he couldn't have it. But that's the thing of the love industry, and you sell a business, you're always going to get those people, unfortunately. So,
And so what did you do differently the second time round? Obviously, moving into the sale process, you were very scared, very heightened, I guess, understanding that things can go wrong. What is it that you did that second time around to feel confident that the buyer had the capacity to complete?
So second time round, obviously we got the right deposit.
Right. Okay. Yeah. First tick. They can come up with the deposit. Okay. Right. Yeah.
Yep.
I like it. Yeah. Good.
We didn't move out of the business until day of settlement.
Clever.
And we also did a little bit of looking into the buyers. These were actually a couple of young guys who had actually bought a number of other pet resorts and boarding kennels, and we were their fifth acquisition.
So they had a track record. They knew what they were doing, and they knew how to run. They clearly knew what the business involved and how to run it. Yeah. And look, that's really sensible.
And the things they were asking for, like, they wanted two months worth of training, which we agreed to, but had to be obviously paid. It wasn't part of the sale price. They had to pay us for that for those 2 months because it happened after the sale was completed. But things like that. There was a whole lot of little things, like the initial sale, we had offered up 2 weeks worth of training and we didn't do any.
Wow. Goodness. And the first buyers had no, looking back on it, they'd had no experience, like the second set of buyers, in terms of running that type of business. Is that right?
The first set of buyers? There was a group of 3 people, and one of them had experience, but she was going to be running it, but not running it.
Right.
It was going to be sort of run, because we had managers and the place pretty much ran itself. But at the end of the day, you don't leave a business to run itself. You always have to have an eye on it, and you've always got to be, not front and center every day, but you have to be there,
Sure.
Particularly smaller businesses. When you get into the corporate world, it's a whole other kettle of fish, obviously. But,
yes.
As a smaller business owner, the business is only run as well as they do when someone at the helm is controlling it and running it.
Yeah. Well, look, I just want to say a massive thank you, Marcus. This has just been, really illuminating. I think you've come up with some really good points as well for business owners who are looking to exit to think about in terms of their own risk protection. I think this concept of vendor due diligence on a purchaser is such a great way of thinking about analysing some of these offers that come before you as well, because it's very tempting to look at price above other things, right? But the things that you're talking about here, at the end of the day, make so much more of a difference than just price on its own, don't they? Well, as you can certainly attest to after
Absolutely.
years and hundreds and thousands in legal fees. Yes.
Absolutely.
And the pain of having to go back in, which, hats off to you. I think having the energy to go back in must have been one of the hardest things, but good on you. You did it, and you've got a happy ending to the story.
Yes, thank you.
Where are you now? Tell us about what you did after you finally sold it, and where it brought you to now.
So my partner and I, Ariel, because of our years within business and all our trials and tribulations being a couple, we have decided that we want to help other couples in business, and so a consequence is starting a coaching program, an online course, and a membership membership community. Really, it's really based around a community of business couples to help each other become more sort of wealthy, healthy, and happy within running their business.
Oh, lovely. I love it.
And their lives. So that's our focus, and that's what we're putting everything into at this point of time.
Oh, brilliant. And I know that you're in the middle of creating a bit of a survey for the business audience in relation to confirming what it is that they need assistance in. Is that right? Is that the point of the survey? Tell me a little bit about the survey.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, the survey that we're sending out to sort of accountants and business owners that we know that are couples in business, and then just out to the community generally, trying to push it out there, is really just getting that feedback on what you as a business couple, what you really struggle with, what components of your business you struggle with, and then what components of your relationship you struggle with. Do you do bed talk? Or not, and things like that. Not quite to that degree, but it is in relation to, as a couple in business, when you work side by side, 5 or 7 days a week, and then you go home, how much do you leave at the door and how much do you bring into your house?
Yeah. And so maybe tell us what we'll do in the show notes, we'll make sure we link through to you and the new business. It just sounds fabulous. And also to the survey. But maybe just tell us, for people who are running along the beach at the moment or on their commute into work, if they're allowed back into their works yet by the time this airs. What's the website? Where do people find you if they want to find you, Marcus?
Okay, so our business website, is businesscouplessuccess.com.
Brilliant. Absolutely love it. As I said, we'll put that in our show notes and on the website. Well, I just want to say an absolutely massive thank you for coming onto the show. It's been such an interesting episode. I've loved speaking to you, and I'm really grateful for you coming on to the Deal Room podcast to share your story.
Lovely. Thank you, Jo. No, it's been an absolute wonder. And hopefully we've shared some great content for people to think about when they are actually in that process of getting up to selling their business. So,
yeah, 100%. Absolutely. You're a legend. Thank you very much, and wishing you massive luck with the new venture. It sounds absolutely fabulous.
Lovely. Thanks, Jo. I appreciate it.
And that's it for our discussion with Marcus Nicholls, now of the Business Couples Success. So if you'd like to find more about how you can contact Marcus Nicholls and Business Couples Success, then just head over to our website at www.thedealroompodcast.com, where you'll be able to link straight through to Marcus and his new business, the Business Couples Success. Or, of course, just check out the show notes to this episode on your favourite podcast player. On our website, you'll also find details of how to contact Marcus and also how to contact any of our lawyers at Aspect Legal if you or your clients would like to discuss any legal aspects of sales or acquisitions. We've got a number of great services that help businesses prepare in advance and get transaction ready, but also to help guide them through the sale and acquisitions process once it's all on foot. We work with clients both big and small and have different types of services depending on size and complexity. So don't hesitate to book an appointment with our legal eagles if you'd like to find out how we might be able to assist. Well, that's it. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. I certainly really enjoy always talking to business owners, and certainly I really enjoyed this discussion today with Marcus. And I think it contains a lot of really useful insights and perspectives from someone who's been there and got the badge. So once again, thanks for listening in. You've been listening to Joanna Oakey and the Deal Room Podcast, a podcast proudly brought to you by our commercial legal practice, Aspect Legal. See you next time. Have you heard of Aspect Legal's partner program? Our partner program is a free program that's open to brokers, corporate advisors, accountants, and any other advisors to businesses who are dealing with organisations that are leading into a sale or acquisition of businesses or shares. As part of our partner program, we offer free access to our legal hotline, which is a support line to our specialist lawyers. We also provide a pre-free sale legal review to buyers and sellers, where we educate them about the process and timelines from a legal perspective. And the third element that forms part of this partner program is a match-up database that we run. where effectively we're able to connect up accountants or brokers or corporate advisors with businesses who are looking to either sell or acquire. So if you're a partner of ours, you go straight into that partner database, and where we can see opportunities to provide matchups, then we introduce you. And the final element of our partner program is ongoing education in the form of seminars, webinars, and meetups. And that's something new that we're introducing into the partner program in early 2020. So if you're not a partner, then all you need to do to become a partner is just pop us an email at partners@aspectlegal.com.au and just simply say in your subject column, I want to become a partner. It's as easy as that to get immediate access to our free legal hotline and all of those other resources. We look forward to having you on board as a partner.
Ladies and gentlemen.
That will conclude this evening's entertainment.
Thanks for listening to the Deal Room Podcast. To find out more about this episode and other episodes in the series, check out the show notes or head over to our website at thedealroompodcast.com.au.